The first light of dawn crept over the Alberta foothills, a soft, gray brushstroke against the dark canvas of the night sky, but Ty was already awake. He had been for hours. Sleep had been a shallow, restless sea, and the moment he'd surfaced from it, the memory of the night before had hit him with the force of a physical blow. The kiss. He lay perfectly still in the guest room bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, his entire being alight with the ghost of that single world-altering moment. He could still feel the impossible softness of Amy's lips, still taste the salt of her tears, still hear the shuddering sigh of relief that had passed from her body into his. For the first time in 4 long, desolate years, he had felt like a husband. He had felt home. A powerful, brilliant joy, so potent it was almost painful, surged through him. It was a feeling he thought had been permanently amputated from his soul, a phantom limb that had suddenly, miraculously regenerated. The woman he loved, the woman he had foolishly, arrogantly decided to let go, was still there. She wanted him. The wall between them had been demolished. But as the initial brilliant light of that joy faded, the cold, hard shadow of his own actions crept in. The pact, the dinner, Nathan. The joy was instantly tempered by a wave of cold, nauseating dread. He had stood before another man and had given his blessing. He had, with his own words, surrendered the very thing he now knew he could not live without. Tim's fiery lecture and Jack's quiet wisdom had shown him the path back, and last night he had finally taken the first decisive step onto it. But the path was already littered with the wreckage of his own misguided decisions. He felt like a fraud. How could he stand before Amy? How could he look her in the eye and accept the beautiful, trusting hope she was now offering him when he was carrying this toxic, unresolved secret? The thought of Nathan, a good man who he had first treated as a rival, then as an heir, and who was now just a massive, complicated problem of his own making, made Ty's stomach churn. The path to truly coming home, he realized with a grim certainty, led directly through another, incredibly difficult conversation, and he had no idea how to even begin it. Unable to lie there a moment longer, trapped in the prison of his own racing thoughts, he swung his legs out of bed. The floorboards were cold beneath his feet. He dressed silently in the pre-dawn gloom and slipped out of the house, the cool, crisp air a welcome shock to his system. He headed for the one place where work could silence the noise in his head, the barn. In what had once been their shared bedroom, Amy was also awake. She lay on her side, a soft, genuine smile on her face as she watched the dawn light begin to filter through her window. She hadn't slept so deeply, so peacefully, in years. The kiss had been a release, a breaking of a fever that had gripped her since the day Ty had returned. The confusing, sad, and distant man had been replaced, in that one moment, by her Ty. The intensity, the passion, the profound, unspoken understanding, it was all still there, buried under layers of trauma and grief, but it was there. For the first time, she felt a surge of pure, uncomplicated hope. The future, which had been a terrifying, formless fog, now had a shape. It would be hard, she knew that. They had years of pain to unpack, a universe of missed moments to account for, but they would do it together. The foundation was still there. The love was still there. That was all that mattered. Filled with a light, buoyant energy, she got up, her heart feeling lighter than it had in a very long time. She wanted to see him. She wanted to share the quiet beauty of the morning with him, to start their new beginning right now. She pulled on a warm sweater and, knowing exactly where he would be, made her way to the barn. The familiar, cavernous space was filled with the soft, slanted light of early morning. The air smelled of hay and horses and old, comforting wood. She saw him at the far end of the aisle, his back to her, methodically forking fresh hay into Spartan's stall. His movements were strong and sure, the easy rhythm of a man who was at home with his work. She watched him for a long moment, her heart swelling with a love so powerful it almost took her breath away. He was really here. He was real.
Couldn't sleep either?
Her voice was a soft murmur, careful not to break the peaceful quiet. He stopped his work and turned, and when he saw her, his face softened, the tense lines of worry around his eyes easing for a moment.
Too much to think about.
She walked towards him, her boots making no sound on the hay-strewn floor. She stopped just in front of him, close enough to see the exhaustion and the conflict still warring in his eyes.
Last night.
She began, her voice a little shy.
It was real, wasn't it?
He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin. The touch was electric, a confirmation of everything she had felt.
Yeah, Amy, it was real.
His voice was a low, rough promise, but she saw the shadow behind his eyes, the flicker of a deep, unresolved pain that even the miracle of the night before hadn't erased. She could see he was still carrying a heavy burden, but she mistook its source. She thought it was just the general weight of his trauma, the long road of healing that still lay ahead. She had no idea it was the specific, urgent weight of a promise he had made to another man.
It's okay, Ty.
She whispered, leaning into his touch.
We'll figure it out. All of it. Together.
He looked at her beautiful, hopeful, trusting face, and the secret he was keeping felt like a physical stone in his gut. He knew he had to tell her, but how? How could he possibly taint this perfect, fragile new beginning with the story of his own foolish, misguided surrender? Not now. Not today. Today, he just wanted to exist in this moment of pure, uncomplicated hope with her. He leaned in and kissed her forehead, a gesture of profound love and a silent, desperate apology for the storm that he knew was still to come.
I know we will.
The walk back from the barn to the main house was a silent, sacred journey. Ty held Amy's hand, his thumb gently stroking her knuckles, the simple, physical contact a powerful anchor in the turbulent sea of his emotions. The new, fragile hope that had dawned with the morning light now felt more real, more attainable. For Amy, the warmth of his hand was the answer to a prayer she had almost forgotten how to speak. The wall between them was not just cracked, it felt as though it had been completely dismantled in the quiet intimacy of the barn. They stepped into the kitchen to the comforting, familiar chaos of a Heartland breakfast. The rich, savory scent of bacon filled the air, and Jack stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with a practiced ease. Lisa was at the table, a warm smile on her face as she watched Lyndy meticulously create a face on her own pancake with blueberries and a slice of banana. The scene was so perfectly, beautifully normal that it almost brought tears to Amy's eyes.
Well, look who decided to join us. Thought you two might have set up permanent residence in the barn.
His tone was teasing, but his eyes, when he looked at them, were filled with a deep, knowing warmth. He saw the way they stood just a little bit closer, the way Ty's hand still rested on the small of Amy's back. He saw the soft, hopeful light in his granddaughter's eyes, a light he hadn't seen in 4 long years.
Good morning, you two. Coffee's fresh.
Morning, Lisa. Morning, Jack.
Morning, Grandpa.
They took their seats at the table, a new, tentative ease settling over them. Ty found himself sitting next to Amy, their shoulders brushing, a simple act that felt both completely natural and monumentally significant. The heavy, oppressive silence of the past few weeks was gone, replaced by the easy, comfortable chatter of a family. Lyndy, sensing the profound shift in the atmosphere, was the life of the party, her bright, bubbly energy filling the room. "Daddy, Mommy, look, my pancake looks like Mr. Whiskers." She held up her plate proudly, showing off the lopsided cat face. Ty laughed, a real, unburdened sound that seemed to make the very sunlight in the room a little bit brighter.
He's a very handsome cat, Bug. The handsomest pancake cat I've ever seen.
He is. Just make sure you eat him before he runs away.
From the other end of the table, Jack and Lisa exchanged a small, quiet look. It was a look of profound, shared relief. For weeks they had watched their family navigate a minefield of grief and confusion. They had seen Ty, a man they loved like a son, lost in a haunted, hollowed-out version of himself. And they had seen Amy, their strong, resilient Amy, stretched to her breaking point by a situation so complex it had no easy answers. But this morning, for the first time, it felt like the long, cold winter was finally beginning to thaw. They were not just coexisting, they were connecting. Jack, in his quiet wisdom, recognized the fragility of the moment. He knew that this new, tentative bloom of hope needed to be nurtured, to be given a space to grow away from the constant, low-level pressures and memories of the ranch. He watched as Ty helped Lyndy cut her pancakes, his movements patient and loving. He saw the way Amy looked at Ty, her heart in her eyes. And in that moment, he devised a plan. He cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the table.
You know, it's a beautiful day out there. Sun is shining, not a cloud in the sky. Too good a day to waste on mending fences.
He took a sip of his coffee, his gaze casual, but his intention clear.
I was thinking, the trout will be biting down at the bend in the river. We haven't had a good fish fry in ages. You three should go, pack a lunch, grab the rods, and make a day of it. A real family day.
The suggestion hung in the air, a perfect, unexpected gift. Lindy's eyes went wide with excitement, her fork clattering onto her plate. Fishing? Can we, Mommy? Can we, Daddy? Please. I've never been real fishing before. Can you teach me? Her excitement was a force of nature, an irresistible tide of pure childish joy. It made it impossible for either Amy or Ty to refuse, sweeping away any lingering hesitation they might have felt. For Lyndy, this wasn't a complicated step in her parents' reconciliation. It was a simple, perfect wish coming true.
I think that's a wonderful idea, Grandpa.
She looked at Ty, a hopeful, questioning smile on her face. The shadow of his unresolved secret, the pact with Nathan, flickered in the back of his mind, a momentary pang of guilt. But it was quickly overshadowed by the bright, shining face of his daughter and the warm, inviting look in his wife's eyes. He would not deny them this.
I think so too. We'll have to see if you've got your mom's talent for it, Bug.
The decision was made. The kitchen erupted into a happy, chaotic flurry of activity. Lyndy ran upstairs to find her rubber boots. Amy began pulling things from the pantry for a picnic lunch. Jack gave Ty a map to his favorite, most secluded fishing spot. Ty found himself in the old, dusty shed with Amy, searching for the fishing gear. The shed was a time capsule of their past, filled with memories of shared projects and quiet moments. He found his old, familiar fishing rod, its cork handle worn smooth from years of use. Beside it was Amy's, a sleeker, more modern rod he had bought her for her birthday, just before he'd left. He ran his hand over it, a wave of bittersweet nostalgia washing over him.
I haven't used that in a long time.
Her voice was soft behind him. He turned to face her.
Well, today's a good day to break it back in.
He handed her the rod and their fingers brushed. The small, simple touch was electric, a silent acknowledgement of the past they had lost, and a hopeful promise of the future they were, at that very moment, beginning to build again. They stood there for a moment in the dusty, sunlit shed, a shared, gentle smile on their faces, the whole beautiful day stretching out before them. The spot Jack had sent them to was a perfect, hidden slice of Alberta paradise. The dirt road gave way to a small, secluded clearing bordered by towering pines and shimmering aspen trees. Below them, the Bow River, its water a brilliant, crystal-clear turquoise, curved around a wide, stony bank before disappearing into the vast, rolling expanse of the foothills. The air was clean and crisp, filled with the scent of pine needles and the constant, soothing rush of the water. It was a place of profound peace, a world away from the complicated, emotionally charged atmosphere of the ranch. Lyndy scrambled out of the truck the moment it stopped, her excitement a tangible, buzzing energy. Is this it? Is this where the fish live? Are they big fish, Daddy? Ty laughed, a deep, easy sound that echoed in the quiet clearing. He was already unloading the picnic basket and the fishing rods, moving with a light, purposeful energy Amy hadn't seen in him before. The heavy, haunted look that had shadowed his eyes for weeks had been replaced by a gentle, focused warmth. Today, he was not a ghost. He was a father.
This is it, Bug. And yes, the fish are very big. As big as this.
He spread his arms wide, and Lyndy gasped with delighted awe. They made their way down the gentle slope to the riverbank, a small, perfect family on an adventure. For the first hour, the day belonged entirely to Ty and Lyndy. Amy sat on a large, sun-warmed rock, watching them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Ty was a master teacher, his patience seemingly infinite. He knelt beside Lyndy on the rocky shore, his large, scarred hands gently guiding her small ones as he showed her how to bait a hook, his voice a low, steady murmur.
See? You just have to be gentle. You don't want to scare him off before he even gets in the water.
He then stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders as he taught her the rhythm of casting. Her first few attempts were a comical disaster, the line tangling in a nearby willow branch or landing with a loud splash just a few feet from the shore. But Ty never once showed a flicker of frustration. He would just laugh, carefully untangle the line, and help her try again, his encouragement a constant, gentle stream.
That's it. You've almost got it. Just a little more flick in the wrist, like you're painting a picture in the sky.
Finally, on her 10th or 11th try, something clicked. Lyndy swung the rod back and then forward in a surprisingly fluid motion, the line unspooling in a long, graceful arc and landing with a soft plink in a deep, calm pool of the river. It was a perfect cast. Her face, a mask of intense concentration, broke into a smile of pure, triumphant pride. I did it. Daddy, I did it.
You sure did, Bug. That was a perfect cast. You're a natural.
He beamed at her, his own pride so radiant it was almost blinding. In that moment, he wasn't just teaching her how to fish. He was rebuilding a foundation, one memory, one shared success at a time. He was finally, truly, being her father. After a while, once Lyndy was happily and independently casting her line into the water, her focus absolute, Ty ambled over to where Amy was sitting. She had her own line in the water, but her cast had been half-hearted, her attention more on the beautiful scene of her husband and daughter than on the fish.
Having any luck?
He asked, his voice a low tease as he came to stand beside her.
Not a bite. I think the fish are offended by my terrible technique. It's been a while.
Well, we can't have that. The honor of the Fleming Borden family is at stake.
He smiled, a genuine, easy smile that made her heart skip a beat.
Mind if I help?
Before she could answer, he stepped up directly behind her. The world seemed to shrink in that instant to the small space they occupied on the riverbank. His chest was a warm, solid presence against her back, and his arms came around her, his larger hands covering her own on the smooth cork of the fishing rod. Her breath hitched in her throat. It had been 4 long years since she had been held like this, since she had felt the simple, profound safety of his embrace.
You're holding it too tight.
He whispered, his chin resting near her temple, his breath warm against her skin.
You have to relax. Feel the weight of the line. It's a dance, not a fight.
He began to guide her through the motion, their bodies moving as one. He was so close she could feel the steady, reassuring beat of his heart against her back. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself sink into the feeling. This was the man she had married. This was the feeling of home. All the confusion, all the pain of the past few weeks, it all melted away in the warmth of his arms. His internal world, however, was a more complex storm. Holding her like this was both heaven and hell. It was everything he had dreamed of in the lonely, lost years, a feeling so right, so perfect, that it was a physical agony. And beneath the joy, the dark, ugly secret of his pact with Nathan was a cold stone in his gut. How can I be here, holding her like this when I told another man he could have her? The thought was a fresh wave of shame. But it didn't create doubt. It created resolve. This, he thought, his arms tightening around her instinctively. This is what I have to fight for. I will fix this. He guided their arms back, and then in a single, fluid motion, forward. The line shot out, a perfect silent arc against the brilliant blue sky, landing exactly in the center of the deep pool. They stood there for a long moment after the cast, locked in their embrace, the world silent save for the rush of the river and the pounding of their own hearts. They didn't catch a single fish. It didn't matter. They broke away slowly, a new, shy intimacy between them. Later, they all sat together on a large plaid blanket, eating the sandwiches Amy had packed, the three of them a perfect, happy portrait of a family. Lyndy, exhausted from her exciting day, eventually curled up between them and fell fast asleep. Ty and Amy sat in a comfortable silence, watching the late afternoon sun turn the river to gold, their daughter a warm, sleeping bridge connecting them. The day was not a solution to all their problems, but it was a powerful, undeniable reminder of what they were fighting for. It was a perfect day, and for the first time in a very long time, the future felt not like a threat but like a promise. The afternoon sun began its slow, golden descent, its light softening, painting the rolling Alberta foothills in long, dramatic shadows. The air grew cooler, the breeze carrying the crisp, clean scent of pine and river water. Lyndy, thoroughly exhausted by the day's excitement, had fallen fast asleep on the plaid blanket, her head pillowed in Amy's lap, her small hand still clutching her fishing rod. Ty watched them, a quiet, profound sense of peace settling over him. For the first time since he had woken up in that clinic in Mongolia, a man with no name and no past, he felt a flicker of something he had thought was lost to him forever: contentment. He stood up, his movements slow so as not to wake his daughter. He gathered driftwood from the edge of the tree line, and with the practiced ease of a man who was at home in the wild, he built a small, neat campfire a safe distance from their blanket. He struck a match, and a few minutes later, a cheerful, crackling fire was pushing back against the encroaching evening chill, its flames dancing, casting a warm, flickering glow on his family. He came and sat back down on the blanket, leaving a respectable space between himself and Amy, though every instinct in his body screamed at him to close the distance. He looked at Amy, at the way the firelight played on her face, illuminating the soft curve of her cheek and the deep, soulful light in her eyes. She was looking at him, a soft, open expression on her face.
Today was perfect, Ty.
Her voice was a low, gentle murmur, almost lost in the crackle of the fire and the rush of the river.
It felt normal, like it used to.
Yeah,
He said, his own voice rough with an emotion he couldn't quite name.
it did.
He looked at his daughter, her small face so peaceful in sleep, and then back at his wife. The joy of the day was real, a solid, tangible thing, but the secret he was carrying, the unresolved mess he had created with Nathan, was a dark, cold counterweight in his soul. He saw the pure, trusting love in Amy's eyes, and the guilt of what he was hiding from her was a sharp, physical pain. He couldn't build a new future on this beautiful, perfect day if its foundation was poisoned by a lie. He had to tell her. But how? How could he possibly inject the ugliness of that night, of his own weakness and flawed decision-making, into the pristine beauty of this moment? He couldn't. Not here. Not now. But he couldn't let it rest in silence either. He reached out, his hand covering hers where it rested on the blanket, her fingers laced with his instantly, a familiar, perfect fit.
Amy, there are still things we need to talk about. Things I need to fix.
Her smile faltered slightly, a flicker of her old uncertainty returning to her eyes.
What things?
Mistakes.
He said, his voice low and earnest, his gaze holding hers.
Mistakes I made when I first came back, when I was lost. I wasn't thinking straight. I said some things and I did some things that I need to make right, before we can really move forward.
The vagueness of his words was a small act of cowardice. He knew that. But it was also a promise. It was an acknowledgement of the shadow that still lay between them, and a vow that he was going to be the one to finally cast it out. Amy searched his face in the flickering firelight. She didn't understand what he was talking about, not specifically, but she understood the sentiment. She saw the sincere, profound regret in his eyes, and she saw the fierce, unwavering commitment that lay beneath it. That was enough for her. For now,
Okay, Ty.
she whispered, squeezing his hand.
Whatever it is, we'll face it. Together.
The journey back to Heartland was a quiet, intimate affair. The moon had risen, a brilliant silver disk in a sea of stars, illuminating the familiar landscape in a soft, ethereal glow. Ty drove, his focus on the dark ribbon of the road, while Amy sat beside him, the silence between them now a comfortable shared space. In the back, Lyndy was fast asleep in her car seat, dreaming of the day's adventures. Amy rested her hand on the center console, and after a moment, Ty's own hand came to rest on top of it, their fingers intertwining. It was a simple, profound gesture of reconnection, a silent promise that the journey home was one they were finally, truly making together. When they arrived back at the ranch, the house was dark and quiet. Ty carried a sleeping Lyndy from the truck, her small body a warm, trusting weight against his chest. He took her upstairs and tucked her into bed, his movements gentle, his heart swelling with a love so powerful it felt like it might break him. He stood in her doorway for a long time, just watching her, imprinting the perfect, peaceful image of her on his soul. He came back downstairs to find Amy waiting for him in the soft glow of the living room lamp. The unspoken question of their sleeping arrangements hung in the air. The guest room door was open down the hall, a symbol of the distance he had created between them. He had a choice to make. He walked over to her, his heart pounding. He had made a promise to her by the river, a promise to fix his mistakes, and he knew with a sudden, absolute clarity that he couldn't do that while still sleeping in another room, a guest in his own life. But he also knew he couldn't just walk back into their bedroom without having the conversation he had promised her, without telling her the whole messy, painful truth. He stopped in front of her, gently taking her hands in his. He leaned in and kissed her, not with the fiery passion from the night before, but with a deep, reverent tenderness. It was a kiss full of the day's shared joy and the promise of tomorrow. He then rested his forehead against hers.
Give me one more night, Amy.
He whispered, his voice a raw plea.
One more night to get my head straight, to figure out how to say what needs to be said, and then tomorrow, no more secrets. I promise.
Amy looked into his eyes, and she saw the truth of his words. She saw his love, and she saw his pain, and she saw his unwavering commitment. She nodded, a single silent tear of pure, unadulterated hope tracing a path down her cheek.
Okay, Ty. Tomorrow.
He kissed her one last time, a soft, lingering press of his lips on her forehead.
Good night, sweetheart.
He said the old, familiar words, and they were filled with a universe of new meaning. He turned and walked to the guest room, not as an act of separation, but as a final, temporary step before truly, finally coming home.